So this is a special edition of Recon Sunday, or Live Recon, whatever you want to call it. I've never had multiple guests on the stream, like 4 of them at the same time. So bear with me. I'm going to try and make this work. But it's going to be different because I have to interview 4 people at the same time. Everybody on this stream today has their own episode. So if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you want to hear more about the guests that I'm going to have live in a few minutes, you can go to youtube.com/nahamsec, my YouTube channel. ZLZ, Irby Sam, both have done their interview. Tanner and Zide have never done an interview with me. So the other 2 have an interview up already. You're welcome to go watch it later if you want to hear more about their work. But enough about this. Let's bring on our amazing guests. And let's talk about hacking Apple. You guys ready? Chat, can we get hyped? Ready? I don't think you're ready. Because I know my viewers, and I know when they're ready. And this ain't Chief. This is not it, Chief. Oh, also, Brett was one of the most requested, anticipated guests for the stream. Okay, Zayat. We spammed him a ton on Twitter, and we finally have him on the stream. So, let's do it. Yo. How's it going, guys? Can you guys hear me okay?
Can you all hear me?
I can hear you. Tanner, I can hear you. Sam's on mute and AFK, I think.
I'm here. Hello.
Nice. All right. Let's go. Well, both Sams have been on this stream before, so I feel like you don't need an intro, but we're going to get to you guys in a sec. Tanner and I have done some talking together, so most people are familiar with Tanner. The one that's been the most anticipated, and I feel like we've spammed the shit out of on Twitter, is Brett. Give us an intro, Brett. Who are you? And we'll go down the list. Who are you? What do you do? And how long have you been in bug bounties?
Yeah, sure. My name's Brett. A lot of you probably know me as Zayat. Sometimes B Beer House. It's my Twitter. I've been doing bug bounty, 6+ years now. It's been a while. You guys probably know me from all of the collaboration I've done with Naham. Lots of write-ups you've probably seen my name in. I work on a red team in the gaming industry. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I mean, just bug bounty, security, CTFs, all that good stuff.
Mr. Beast, puzzles, Rainbow Six League. Let's go to you, Tanner. What about you, man? Give us an intro. You're on mute, dude. Your mic's gone.
There it is. It's back. I forgot it's not like on my head. Yeah, so my name's Tanner. You guys know me from Ben working on recon.dev and some other tools I put out in the industry. Like day job stuff, I do full-time pen testing work for a consulting firm. But on the side, my kind of involvement with bug bounty is building a lot of different tools for the community, whether I find the idea or things like recon.dev where, Ben brought it to me as something we could kind of tackle together. So as far as bug bounty goes, I didn't actually get into the bug bounty space until about a year and a half ago. So it's been very new to me for sure, this niche.
Sam, let's go to you, ZLZ. There's 2 Sams. I gotta make sure I say the right one every time. ZLZ.
I've been doing bug bounty stuff for probably about 4 years now, I think, but mostly just involved through doing web app stuff. I run a blog, samcurry.net. Most the vulnerability Reddits I do there. Besides that, just not much else. University. But yeah, that's about it.
Before I move to the next Sam, definitely check out ZLZ's blog. You have some really cool write-ups there, dude. The Starbucks one, I think you did something on one of the gaming sites. I don't want to say what site, just in case you ever did it. And then the giant Apple write-up that you put together most of the work. It was insane. So if you want to read about the Apple stuff, it's on Sam's blog. Go check it out. Irby Sam, the guy that beats me at Airbnb because I didn't have my domain set up one day and I lose out on money. What's up, man?
That was a good story. I am so a bit of an intro about myself. I am a software developer at Akamai, working kind of full time on security projects, and I also now work part time on an internal red team there as well. So I'm really a night and weekend warrior here, and these guys all stay up later than me.
I feel like Sam never sleeps. It'll be like 4 a.m. my time, and this guy's like, "Oh, I found this domain on Apple, by the way. Do you guys want to look at it?" Wow.
That was crazy. I'd wake up and I just have 1,000 messages on my phone to scroll back through.
All right, let's talk about how this Apple thing started. I think, ZLZ, this is a question mostly for you since I feel like you assembled this team. What happened, man? What lit that fire under you to want to go after Apple and bring us on?
Yeah, I saw that there's a tweet for that really, really awesome finding where I am totally blanking on the name, but they were able to find like $100,000 security vulnerability where they could basically forge JWTs for any account for their Apple sign-in. And I got really interested because like in the past, I feel like Apple's bug bounty and security program was mainly for products, and it was like heavily like at just the devices. And I say like as far away, and I think most people in bug bounty did, like as far away from that as possible, because like I didn't know the first thing about, like device hacking. So I was like, whatever. But when I saw that write-up, it was really interesting because it's like, if Apple pays for like web vulnerabilities, like this will be super interesting. So like, I kind of just made the decision. I was like, I really, really want to put like as much time into this as possible. And just see, like one, I think there was like a little bit of that, like, if people are like just now finding about this program, there should be like a pretty fresh scope. So it felt like, like a new private program opened or something. And at the same time, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I feel like a lot of people are going to be hitting this program as well. So I may go like as hard at it as possible. So I started like, I kind of thought, I was like, okay, who could I like work with on this? And I've worked with Zayed a lot in the past. And I was kind of like, for I think about a week, I was blowing him up. And I was just sending messages. I was like, dude, this is really cool. Like, we should really look at this. And then he was finally like, you know what? I was like, all right, we'll commit to this and we'll do like a lot of effort in this. And if we don't, maybe their program doesn't pay and maybe we find some cool bugs or maybe nothing happens, but like, whatever, let's just go at it. And then I think that's when we started like bringing everyone together. We initially, I think Zayed said we should get like a couple other people involved. And so we reached out to you, Ben, and then Ben involved Tanner. And that was where I feel like things really started to get rolling, was like that first bit of like recon and finding like how massive Apple was. I feel like that like got everybody kind of involved, but I feel like that's kind of how it started. Yeah, that's my side of that.
So Brett, you were the second leg in this, right? So you guys were talking back and forth. What was your initial reaction to doing this Apple bug bounty, not knowing A, if we're going to get paid, B, it's going to be a lot of effort. It's a giant company. How did you feel about going in not having any expectations pretty much?
Yeah, I think ZLZ and I are similar in the sense that we'll hack on things if they're interesting to us. I'm not a big fan of going out and doing, bug bounty or security research for free if it's, specifically for bug bounty. But if it's just like security research that's very interesting to me, I'm going to dive into it and I'll probably have fun with it. And I think in this case, it's like, well, it's Apple, right? Apple's interesting. And then once we started to do a little bit of recon, we're just like, wow, this is massive. This is like a playground. And nobody's really looking. Well, I didn't know initially. I was like, there are some people who are disclosing findings on there. They list some of the names of people who've reported things. But really, it felt like as we dug into it, nobody has really like hit them very hard. So
speaking of recon, yeah, it's a massive infrastructure. I think we didn't even scratch the surface with Apple, right? We only went for Apple.com. Like, we didn't even bother looking for anything that was non-Apple.com. Tanner, you had a little bit of insight on so I think we got some data from recon.dev, and then Brett was using some of his tools that he uses. Let's talk about Apple. How big is the infrastructure? Because you did a lot of scanning for us. How did that work?
Yeah.
How do we do it?
So is it really good timing? Because when the Apple stuff started kicking off, we'd really just gotten the scanner going from just kind of something that was running locally on my machine to actually starting to scale it. So it was a a really good timing wise to test it. Yeah, Apple is huge. I don't have it in front of me, but I think they own almost an entire like /12 or something. I mean, it's huge. They own a large chunk of the internet. It's just really, really insane. So
it's like millions of IP addresses, right? There was a couple million.
Yeah. I mean, it was almost impossible to try to obviously go through them one by one. That was just not going to happen, right? So being able to take those large site ranges and use something like recon.dev to pull all of those domain names out, right, from the certs, we were actually able to find some hosts for some of those findings that may have been a little bit harder to try to brute force out that DNS name. So being able to go kind of in that opposite direction of, we have all of these, we know their IP addresses, they're publicly available through the ASNs, right? So then just being able to turn those from raw IPs into actionable hosts was a lot of fun for sure.
And I think Sam, or you also did a lot of recon, but you were more on the content side. You were grabbing like titles and that kind of metadata that we needed. How did that work? How did you do it? I know you have your own scanner going on, if you want to touch on that a little bit too, but the content discovery, why was it important for us to have that kind of data?
Yeah, so I have a scanner that I actually gave a talk at the DEF CON Packet Hacking Village a few years back on, that just scans for TLS certs on the internet. And so I used that data, and then I think I also pull in like the Rapid7 data and Sonar data, Project Sonar data, sorry. And what I do I really try to get to the point where, we can start the manual process. And so for me, it's just like important to, search for, really do what everyone else is doing here. Like, I'm searching for page titles, and I'll just like sort them by page size. And that to me is generally enough to get going. And so that's really, I guess what I contributed here to the recon process.
Why is that the sizing so important, just for people that isn't obvious enough?
Oh, sorry. So like this is the same is true with screenshots as well. Like screenshots work just as well. One of the things that I found very useful, or I've found consistent across a large number of domains I've scanned, is that the pages that are similar will have similar sizes. Like they won't be exact, the HTML won't be exact, but they'll generally have similar sizes, similar titles. So, grouping by page size I found often works well enough, to group relevant or similar pages together. And then it's just, going down the list and diving in from there, starting manually, so to speak.
So if I remember correctly, there was I don't even know the number of thousands of domains we found. 20, 30,000? Is that an accurate number, Sam?
Yeah, I think so. Oh,
sorry. No, either one of you guys. I want to. How do we manage? Because I know you had some decent. We try to track these domains. ZLZ, tell us about that little Google sheet we had for tracking purposes.
Well, I feel like first we'll do Sam E, Sam C, just to get that. But
oh, that's just saying ZLZ to make it easier.
Yeah, I got you. There was the when we started, we put together like this kind of like Google sheet where we like tracked, because the way Apple's like vulnerability submission program works is like you would email them, right, and they'd email back like a ticket number, and it was like basically like a support ticket portal. But they'd manage it like super well. But the issue is like, since it was email, it was kind of hard to like involve everyone. So we built like this Google spreadsheet with like vulnerability title, ID, date submitted, and then like the state of the vulnerability. So like when it really, like initially started as just like this poorly put together spreadsheet, and then like I think once I started sharing it with everyone, like everyone like redesigned it, and then we had like a bunch of Apple memes we threw together, and like, but it made it really fun like to go through and like add stuff in. But every day I feel like there'd be like something different with it. But yeah. It helped us, like in the end, we just had like a really big spreadsheet of bugs, and it's kind of cool to see. So
how did the hacking work? How do we prioritize targets? And that's open to everybody. Like, where do we start? What was important to us?
I think I guess I could start this out a little bit. With the like initial recon data, we saw like it helped us really understand the way like Apple did host for like customers and employees, and whether or not the host was just like some weird like CDN for iCloud. Because there were probably about like, I would say 40% of .apple.com, or maybe even like 60% was just like the same host with like a different ID, right? So
Yeah.
one thing with like iCloud, one thing with like iCloud is there's like p41 dash whatever .icloud.com, and there was like 20 different segments of that. So it'd be like 40 domains that are related to one service, 40 domains related to another service. So like once we got through that, like picking the initial host was like relatively kind of easy, because you could pretty much immediately see like, this is an employee application that's behind SSO, but when I hit like a 404 endpoint, it doesn't error me out. Therefore, there's a chance that there's some API that's accessible here. So we kind of just like, there's a lot of really interesting hosts there that way.
And I think we were doing scans pretty regularly, right, Tanner? We were doing every few days, and then you were doing some other stuff. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we were doing, at the height of it, we were doing, once we got it kind of rolling, we were doing once at the start and once at the end of the week. So to try to catch things that had deployed at the start, and then try to catch things at the kind of the end of the week they had pushed in. So we were running them twice a week, and then over the weekend we were doing a lot of the diving into, or at least I was, with taking those dumps and trying to run some like secondary tooling to put dumps out of that to give back to the group to sift through.
And then, if I know, Zayed, you didn't like the whole like asset discovery thing. I know that's not your jam, but you were really interested in like breaking things apart, especially things that had logins in front of it.
Yeah.
Tell us.
I can give a little bit of a high level on my recon part of it too.
Yeah.
Initially, for me personally, like Ben just said, I'll do very light recon, look for apps and just kind of focus on the apps. I'll do like, Google dorking, archive.org, those common things. I'll hit up Ben, Sam, just collect as many domains as possible. And, luckily we also had the IP sitter range there. I think initially we just did like common 100 ports and screenshots and just kind of went one by one. We had another spreadsheet, which I have it up right now.
How many domains is that?
It's 18,000 domains in there. Obviously not all of them responded. We dumped them all in there anyways. But when you're kind of faced with that much data, it's like, especially when you don't know the company, it's your first time looking at them, it's just overwhelming, right? So when I saw that, I just went, all right, I'm just going to Google apple.com and just see like what are their like main apps and just go from there, right? And I think after like a few weeks of just kind of clicking around, it kind of just started to make sense to us. Like, okay, this is the naming convention. All right, there's corp.apple.com. We can kind of bucket all of these things. And it's, we could talk about this a little bit later with like specific findings, but there were like instances where we're like, oh, we hit this API and we have this API key now, but we can't access this internal host. Like, how can we escalate this? And, we just go back to the spreadsheet and we're like, oh, dude, there's like 8 hosts with this name on it. And one of them was just public facing, right? It's a lot of just like collecting data initially, I feel like.
So someone's asking in chat if there were any burp extensions we used. We didn't really use any extensions, right? What tools did we use other than regular recon tools, right? I don't think we did a lot of tooling at all. It was mostly manual testing.
Zaid, I think you did like a lot of, I wouldn't say tooling, but there's definitely potential for tooling, but like parsing out JavaScript, like that was a huge part of hacking Apple. And I think we could have maybe done something there, but I don't know, besides, at least I feel like for me and Zayed, mostly just like Burp Suite, but
no
yeah,
plugins
like my NetSquid tooling with the recon, you've seen that for years now. It's just like a glorified front end and like a Python pool for what's essentially just like Nmap and banners, and then like Phantom.js for screenshots. I think a lot of people are using the same tools at this point. In terms of like hacking tools like Burp, there's like specific plugins and stuff, like Hackverter. I don't think they specifically helped with Apple. They're just like generally good plugins.
Yeah, I think having some tools is important. But speaking of NetSquid, for people that are watching this, so funny enough, the tool that Brett just mentioned, NetSquid, is what we originally used instead of recon.dev, we would scan a bunch of like IP spaces, and we scanned a ton of IPs, but it would take us like weeks at a time, sometimes months at a time, where it would take us that long to scan, and then eventually it died down because we couldn't keep up, and it was taking way too long. And I think same when you did your DEF CON talk, I went to bed and I was like, dude, well, fuck, he just did it in like under a few hours. What's the point of scanning in a few weeks? And then Sam, I think yours was in 2018, right? Your talk was in 2018.
Yeah, I think it was 2018 Packing Village. The video should be online along with the slides.
Yeah, and that's when I went to Tan. I was like, hey, there is something here. We used to take like months at a time to do it. I know Sam's already doing this, but can we like bring down the number from like hours to like a single hour to 45 minutes to scan? And then kind of, I want to give that background on that's how the whole recon.dev started. It wasn't that we just started today. It was just me and Brett were, I think one night we're really bored. We wanted good data, and he was just like, what would happen if we scanned all these IP addresses? And we got some fanny packs in return from Netflix for owning one of their infrastructure. I know we're both a little salty because of that bug, but let's talk about some Apple bugs. Sam, what was that first vuln that really got us interested in Apple? There was a particular bug that we came across that we have a meme for also.
The heap dump?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was our first like recon bug. I think one of the first like large bug that we found, but basically like there was an exposed actuator endpoint. And it was really cool that it was like one of the first findings because we were all kind of like hacking in chat together, and we found like this e-signed host, which was like it's basically their internal equivalent of like HelloSign, I think. Yeah. But like we just did like a quick dir search, and like it was pretty like, oh, hey, there's an actuator. Like, let's explore this, maybe try to get RCE. But when we looked through like the actuator heap dump just to verify that like this was actually, internal host, it wasn't like some like really crap like Dockerized thing with no data whatsoever. We kind of saw like just an insane, crazy amount of data that was like super, super, super sensitive. And one of the things that we came across was like this, the employee cookie, which is ACAC, ACACK. Yeah. We saw it like being passed through, and just to verify like that, like this was like maybe accessible to us and we could prove our impact. We copied that cookie and like pasted it in, and we were authenticated as like, I think like an administrator of the eSign application, and just had like full access to documents. But it was really like such a good like first crazy bug, because like we got to see like how, because the way Apple apps are set up, like they all use, I feel like, the same like sort of authentication system. Mm-hmm. And we got to kind of see how that was like internally configured through some of the data. But they were like super quick in actioning that one. Like we reported it and they responded in a couple hours, and it was fixed like completely the next day.
And this goes back to what Brett was saying too about the different hosts, right? You want to talk about that a little bit, Brett?
Oh yeah.
Because he was just mentioning earlier that we would see like there's this, this keyword is coming up with 5 different hosts, and then it was like e-sign, different environments.
That one was interesting for a few reasons. To touch on what you were just saying though, yeah. With that one, with the actuator, we could, at that point see all the endpoints, and we realized that, okay, the e-sign service had 5 different services running on it, right, on that host. And each service also had an actuator on it. So all of a sudden, one host now had 5 heap dumps of info. And then we went back and looked at our host list again. We're like, oh, there's like 8 different e-sign servers, and they're all vulnerable. So that one just spiraled very quickly.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Tanner.
Well, so I think if I remember the actual production, like the internal corp key, the cookie actually came from like the 4th or 5th one we looked at. Like we originally found one of the eSign apps, realized it had the actuator, and then we went back and dug into the host list. The 4th one we went down was the one that ended up being the one with the internal cookies in it.
Yeah, I was going to say the cookies didn't work immediately, right? Like we tried one and then we couldn't log in, and then that's when you were like, there's got to be more of this, because there were different permutations. Like it was like prod and then this, there was that. I think that's when we started digging in. And then how do we get a login, Sam? How'd that work?
The login, how do we like log into the app, or?
what mistake did you make that
Oh, yeah.
landed us into these internal apps?
Oh, you mean like setting the cookie?
Yep.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah. So
your burp suite match and replace.
Oh yeah, so I had set a rule in Burp Suite to like match and replace my cookie because I was just like tired of like resetting it. Because like what would happen was I would like browse to like other other pages or applications, just say like, oh, you're not authorized to see this, so like completely clear my cookie. So I was just like, whatever, let's just do a match and replace rule to completely replace my cookie. And after we were like far done with the eSign application, we were just like browsing around, and like what we were doing exactly what Diet was describing, where we're just like clicking through each host. And then one of the hosts popped up, and like I was immediately authenticated. It's like, hello, you're logged into this internal application. And I was like, that's really weird. And then I remembered like the match and replace rule for Burp Suite. But it turns out like that leaked ACAT cookie is like a universal cookie for like a billion different apps, right? So like we kind of explored that a little bit further, and then like had to like reply to the email and say like, here's additional impact. We realize that this is used for this, but it's kind of funny to have that reported, I guess.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that was like the bug when we're like, there's got to be more of these. Like, there's got to be more, more vulns on Apple to find. Because that to me is a little bit of on the low hanging end, right? Just you hit actuator, it's there. You hit trace, and bam, there's like a ton of stuff.
Yeah, completely. But what was interesting is that like it definitely felt that way, and we were like, I feel like everybody was kind of hoping for more of those like low hanging issues a little bit. But it turned out that was like the only host with like an exposed like easy endpoint, which is really crazy because it was like one of the first hosts we like looked at. Maybe they did like some internal scanning a little bit, but I'm really not sure why. I think that host may have been like configured in a weird way where like it looked like we were accessing it internally. I'm really curious why that vulnerability like existed, because it didn't feel like they wanted it to be externally accessible, especially like looking at everything else. But I feel like the relationship between like eSign and internal eSign, they maybe like proxied it in a weird way where it looked like we were accessing it internally. But yeah, it's really, really interesting.
But there was a few times where I remember you were a little, I don't want to say unhappy, but unmotivated is a better word. You were unmotivated because we weren't finding bugs. But then we would go on these random rampage sprees of finding more vulns. You want to talk about that a little bit? I wanted people to understand like it wasn't all everyday finding bugs. And
I want to add something while we're still talking about eSign before I dive into that. I was just thinking that while ZLZ was talking, people are probably listening to this and questioning like, hey, why did you download the heap dumps? Why were you like digging through them? Because in a lot of programs, like that's like a big no-no, right? Mm-hmm. When we went into this on Apple, I mean, there's like the web bug bounty program for Apple is like one sentence, right? And specifically they call out, hey, we care about impacts. And, we've talked to Apple employees since we reported these things. And that's pretty much what they said was, we care about anything that impacts our company. So we went into this with the intention of saying like, hey, we're going to find things, but we need to like verify that there's actual impact here. So that's kind of like the explanation of why we were digging through and felt, comfortable to go a little bit further than we normally would. All right, going back to what you were saying.
Hold on, before we move on, but I want to also mention, like, with a heap dump, for example, like, you can't just report it on its own because there's no way of saying if this is a medium impact or a critical impact, right? You don't know what's in that dump unless you go through it. We don't have to, I'm not saying that, like, yeah, go through the heap dump, read it all, and then, like, abuse the data you get out of it. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to show some impact, like, hey, there are some cookies in here, there are some leak API keys in there, because if it wasn't for us going through all those heap dumps and the HTTP traces that we were looking at, we wouldn't have known how much access this thing had, right? Let alone knowing that we had internal corporate access at some point to, see some other internal websites. So there's a fine balance of, when it comes down to like regular bug bounty programs, there is a fine balance of like, this is what we can do and this is what we can do, which is with Apple is like, we have to show impact or we're not going to get, however much that bounty was. I feel like that would have just dropped from what we got into maybe a 20% because so what, the heap dump was there.
Absolutely. And I think since it was one of our first findings and we were like new to the program, we hadn't really communicated with them. It's really hard to determine where that line falls. I mean, certain programs that you've hacked on for years, okay, if I cross this line, I know they're going to catch it and I know they're going to be mad. With Apple, it was just a complete unknown. So as we're like digging through, pulling out cookies and like actually trying them, it's like, yeah, we're determining impact, and it's easy, you know, it's good to show this to them. But at the same time, it's like you're kind of sweating a little bit. Like, is this like too far? We didn't know, right?
I mean, we're having those conversations, right? We're just like, did we go too far? Did we not go too far? Are they going to be pissed? But the good thing was, I think, Sam, you put that long email together when you're like, hey, we really want to show impact. We didn't do anything other than see if the cookies work. Here's what we did. Do you want to talk about that a little bit before we move on to the...
Yeah, there was like, for I feel like every vulnerability that we found that was like higher critical impact, I was very, very like communicative and saying like, you know, here's what we found. Here's what we think we can do. Do we have permission to do this? And if not, or otherwise, I would say like, here's how we found this bug. Like, here's everything we did. Here's our IP addresses and stuff. And like, Apple is really, really great about like, I think with a heap dump, they're like, okay, you know, we see this vulnerability exists. We know the impact. Please delete all your files, and any remaining files that you do have, could you please like encrypt them and send them over? And they like understood everything. And there wasn't a single time, and I'm not encouraging anybody to like dig as deep as possible, but I feel like Apple is really, really good at understanding that like we're not like trying to cause harm, but more just trying to prove impact. And I think with heap dump, it's like a really good example where it's like, you know, there'll be like data that you find in there, right? And like there's a difference between like exploiting that like maliciously. Like for instance, if we log into the eSign application using the employee cookies, when you start clicking like view document, edit document, delete document, like that's completely, I feel like that's like way past the point. But if you're just like, okay, I'm sending a GET request using this cookie, am I authenticated? Like that's completely acceptable with Apple specifically. But yeah, the whole process, they're like very, very good at communicating like whether or not they want to just keep going or stop. And that's kind of that with Apple.
Yeah, I agree. It also comes down to the intent. Like we were very upfront, we were open. We didn't try to cover up anything we did, and we told them like, hey, this is what we access. This is the IP addresses we use. This is, you know, and then we promised to delete everything we had, and we all kept our promises, right? But I want to talk about this whole, you know, we didn't just find bugs every day. I know you guys at some point, I was gone for a little bit of this, full disclosure. My birthday was in the middle of all these. So I was gone for a while, and I'm like, you know, by a pool, looking at my phone and Discord and seeing these guys going in on some of this stuff. But there was a few days where we didn't find anything. Like, I remember there was times where I would have Tanner, like, hey, Tanner, can you scan this again? Like, let's scan all these IP addresses. Let's drop a diff, see what's brand new that just came up. Look at those. Nothing. There were no new bugs. We felt a little unmotivated. I want to hear it from all of you guys. Let's start with you, Brett. How did you stay motivated? What did that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's maybe hard for some people to relate with me specifically because, like, I'll have emotional highs and lows, and then I'll just go on complete binges where I'm just hacking for like 12 hours straight. I think it's kind of like a catch-22 because like I'll get highly motivated binge, and if I don't find anything, then I'm like extremely like no longer motivated for like the next 24 hours. There were definitely, this was like a very weird, I don't really know how to describe it, but I would say since we were going into this with no expectations, and it was just kind of for fun, it wasn't like, oh man, a week with no findings, like this is the worst. I'm not getting paid. I'm wasting my time. It's sort of just like, I think by the second or third week, it's like, I know these vulnerabilities exist. Why am I not finding them? It was like becoming more about frustration, especially when you've got, you know, a host list that's 18,000 domains. It's just like, just scrolling through like, is it this one, right? Like, I don't want to go one by one at that point. I'm just hoping I can identify something to hack on. I guess in addition to that, you know, I would say on average, like every 3 to 4 days, you know, we'd find something super, super fun to hack on. You know, like most bounty programs, there's maybe one of those findings where it's like, for just a couple hours, you're like, oh, I pulled out the right brick. This whole wall is coming down, and you're just escalating and finding like cool chains. It's like really exciting. With Apple, it was like every 3 to 4 days. So like in between those findings, it's just like, come on, when's the next one? Like I was just waiting for it. Definitely a roller coaster, yeah.
So I can
Right.
add a little bit more to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So I feel like that's like a lot of the reason I like hacking with other people, especially you guys, is because it's like, we'd independently each find something, and then it's like, we put it in the chat like, hey, this is potentially interesting, and let's dig into it a little bit more. And for me especially, this is something I guess I want to bring up here. It's like I really enjoy hacking with other people because I find what I miss. I feel like that's a really good learning tool for me. It's like, oh, like why didn't I look at this thing before, or how did you spot that and I missed it, that kind of thing.
But what I want to hear from you guys, let's go just starting with you, Brett, and we'll just go down the line all the way to the right, Tanner and Sam and ZLZ. What keeps you guys motivated? Was it the high we were chasing of finding a bug? Was it the cash? Was it that it's Apple and we're going to find more bugs? What was it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the cash at all. I mean, a lot of people can look back on our blog posts and see like the amount that we got paid for findings. But I mean, the reality is for the first month or even longer, how long did we hack on them? 2-3 months. We just didn't even expect to get paid. I mean, eventually we did get paid for one thing, and that kind of became a new motivator, I would say, because we're like, okay, if that paid so much, some of these things we're finding will probably pay a lot as well. What kept me motivated? I don't know. I guess for me, like knowing that we were going to do a blog post was very exciting, because I knew like a lot of people were probably interested in seeing some of the things we were finding on Apple, and every new finding, I was like, okay, this blog post is just getting cooler and cooler like each day.
What about you, Tanner?
Yeah, so for me, it was, I guess the motivation for me was my biggest role, and this is more on the tool side, on maintaining the scanner, building some new things that we needed to kind of help us along going through that large list. So for me, it was the motivation of just as you start doing things longer and we started working together, you start to see common problems come up and common things we need to solve. And so that was my motivation going through this, just trying to find a new type of problem to tackle, because that's really where my passion is. As much as I think bug bounty hunting is a lot of fun, I think really my passion is building tools to make that job easier and quicker for the people, like ZLZ and Zayat and Irving and y'all guys. They're real rock stars here. So I just I think that was really my motivator, was building the tools through the whole project.
What about you, Sam? Herb?
That's a good question. I really, like I said before, it really just comes back to, it's like, I was very curious about what Apple's infrastructure looks like. That to me going into this was a big question mark. I feel like at this point it's like we've looked at, or at least I've looked at a lot of like larger companies. I have some idea of what their external attack surface looks like. With Apple, I had very little idea of what was out there and how it worked and how it all got put together. And digging into things, one domain in particular, I think was like myaccess.apple.com. That was kind of like one of their central points of access control. So like digging into stuff like that, I feel like allowed me to gain a much better understanding of how it worked. And at the same time, I'm looking to become better at doing this kind of stuff day to day, become a better red teamer. And so, working with these guys has been a great opportunity.
ZLZ, tell us, man. What about you?
Yeah, like I totally agree with both Brett and Sam. It's really like the blog posting was really cool to me. I really like the idea of like finding like really cool stuff that affected so many people. Apple has so many customers. It's such a large company. I just felt that like every bug we found had the potential to be like really, really interesting. Like the idea that like the idea that like you'd find a bug that like affected the iPhone, and like you could like, for instance, like track anybody on Find Your Friends or something like that, to that nature, is like, wow, like this is like actual like real world implications. There was like that whole aspect. I think when we started, it was definitely the idea of like doing a blog post eventually and like finding hopefully cool stuff. Like the one last thing, like Sam said, becoming like a better red teamer and a better like hacker, I think was really interesting to me. I've always had like a bit of envy for like jailbreak people, and I think this kind of like helped me get envy in a sense of like, it always felt so far away. Like all like the device hacking stuff, it seemed like so complicated and like so like unapproachable. Because every time you read like a jailbreak, thing, it's like, here's some assembly code and like here's like my exploit, and it's like, wow, like this seems like so far away. But like actually seeing like, oh, like one thing we found was like the settings app was like literally a web app, right? And like, wow, this is like so much more approachable to me. So like being able to like really dig deep and like explore these things that like I was like kind of afraid of in a sense, and then like also just the idea of like collaborating, working together, and bringing us together. And then lastly, once I would say honestly, like that first payout was a little bit even of a hindrance. Like, I mean, it was fantastic, but like the thing was from that point forward, we're like, all right, they paid X amount for this. How can we assess this and like, have the most rewarding like work? And it's like, like, I don't know. It was good, but at the same time, it was like just kind of confusing for us to like try to understand.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I just wanted those Apple 12 leaks. We never got them, but maybe next year.
That is true. That payout was just like we tried to assess our other findings using that as like a metric, and we were just completely off. It wasn't even close.
Yeah,
Not
it was.
even close.
That was yeah.
I'm pretty sure that you just roll dice over there.
I mean, it's hard though, right? Like, to be fair, like it's kind of hard to understand how we don't understand some of these apps that we're owning. Like, is this a real app? Like, do they even use this regularly? I know, Sam, you have a little bit to add to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it was, I would say more. They seem to really care about customer impact. I think that's the one finding in terms of assessing like criteria for payouts, is they really care about like customer impact. So if you own some like you have RCE on some like thing without any customer impact, and maybe there's like a little impact to Apple for like integrity or something, I feel like they're less willing to like pay for that unless you can say like, hey, we've impacted your customer somehow, or like yeah, I feel like they're really passionate about that side of like payouts. But yeah, back to everything else.
Excel saying they rolled some baller dice if they ended up resulting in $300,000. Let's talk about collaboration. And we used, so I see someone in the chat said, other than spreadsheets, what other tools did you use to coordinate, collaborate, and share information? How'd that work? I know we did a lot of, there was months of collaboration. Let's talk about our secret tool that we had for all of our communication and note taking.
Is Discord a tool? Penning messages on Discord? I think that.
But that was smart though, right? To pin stuff that we thought was important into the Discord.
We only started pinning because we lost track, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, like there were a couple times to be like, oh, there's potentially SSR or SSRF here, like, and then you'll go click the Discord pin messages, and it's like internal applications, and you copy and paste, and like, I don't know, it was definitely a good tool.
Yeah, there was one like amazing pin that we had that was just like, all right, here's like 5 different open redirects that have like these different like conditions, and we're like, here's like 3 hosts you should hit for the SSRFs, and if it can hit these, then you're in like this area. Dude, the pins were just like mad useful.
Yeah, I feel like there was a few times when we would have to, at least I would have to go to the search in our group and be like, have we looked at this host? Because I would message and be like, hey, this host looks interesting. And then one of you guys would like send me a message from like 2 weeks ago that was deep in the chat because of how much we were sending in that Discord chat. That was like, oh, we looked at this already. There's this thing that we looked at. And I'm like, okay. So I would go into the corner, put the domain in, search for it just to make sure we've already not looked at it.
Yeah, there was I guess back to the main point of collaboration, I feel like one of the best or like coolest collaborative bugs we found was like that Delmia Aprizo. I think Sam wanted to talk about this one as well. Like that was when we were all like active and we found this one host. I think Zayat found the host actually, but it was like this, it was just like this login page for, I think we ended up writing up in the blog post, but like it was literally just like a login page for like a command and control thing for like a warehouse solution. And I think we all became like super interested in it just because like, I don't know, there's like the little bit of like hacker nature of like, what is behind this? Is this like all of Apple's like CNC stuff for your warehouse, or like, yeah, that one was really cool. But I think Sam wanted to talk about that one a little bit.
Yeah, let's touch on that a little bit, Sam.
Yeah, I found that one really interesting just because I think it highlighted like some combination of like, our persistence as well as us collaborating, because like if I remember correctly, like when this started out, it's like I think someone posted in the chat, and then I think it was Brett had the initial like, hey, this forgotten password feature thing is weird and doesn't seem to be implemented correctly. And then, it was like legit, like the next day or something, that we were poking at it and we discovered some API endpoints that were accessible. And then, it wasn't like immediately that this all clicked together. And then, a few hours later, I think we discovered that we could send through some API calls. And then I think Sam stayed up that night until like, some ungodly hour of in the morning to figure out how to create a user using that API. So it was like some combination of like each of us finding some little piece of this and then stitching it all together over the course of multiple days, to actually pull this off.
Yeah, it was like a super, super interesting process. Like, I remember the first thing we found was like, we found that weird password reset thing that let us like log in as like Delmia no name user. But then there's like, once we found those API calls, we like it pulled like an inventory list of like Apple's like production stuff. And we're all like, what is this? Like, this is like super, super, super interesting. So we spent like the whole night like Googling the application, like trying to understand what it was. But I think like more than anything, we're just like so curious to see like what was behind that. And like the amount of persistence for that was like pretty crazy, I think. But I do remember like Discord, like I think Zayat was like, he'd been hacking all day and I was trying to explain to him a bit. And he was like, yeah, it's kind of cool. And I was like, no, I got to prove that this is cool. Cause it's like, I don't know, maybe like, cause I was like super, super motivated. And that's why I started hacking all night, trying to figure it out. But it was like just all the puzzle pieces together.
This is the one with the invalid password thing, right? Oh, that's not the same one. Yeah, okay. So if you're looking for it on the blog, in the blog post itself, it's under full compromise of Apple's educator program.
Oh.
That's not the same one.
No.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. This is the Delmia Prezo.
I want to just make sure I can link to it.
I mean, this also kind of speaks to like, looking at login fields, figuring out how they're implemented, making sure they're implemented correctly. Because there are a lot of custom implementations out there, and this really shows that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, I don't say a lot, there was also another one, because I'm going through the blog post right now, looking for the one that you were just mentioning, and I came and found out the one with the invalid password thing. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Sam?
Yeah, sure. So there's like the Apple developer or like Apple Distinguished Educator program, where it was like, they have this like it's like a Jive form for like, for, I think people who just like work in like Apple's like I'm not sure who it's meant for, but it's basically like this application for like people to come collaborate and be like a forum on, but it's only meant to be accessible by like a few people. So one of the things you can do is like apply to use the forum. But what's really interesting about like applying to use the forum is it goes through Apple's authentication system and then it talks to Jive, the forum application. So they kind of like integrated their own authentication system into Jive, and it was done kind of hackily. And the way you can kind of notice is when you go to register for the application, you notice like it sends through a password field, which is like ! password 123 or something like that. Okay. And what we noticed is like when you did that, it'd say like you've submitted your application, use the, whatever, we'll get back to you. And we kind of thought about it a little bit. And I think me and Zayat had like the idea like, hey, maybe there's like a way where we could like manually authenticate to the Jive application. Because what we thought was like, if this password value is static for my registration and this password is static for your registration, then if we can find a user account that we can like log into, we could literally just like log in using that password. So like, I think Zayat found that manual login endpoint and then we started spraying it. But if you want to go a little bit more over that, Brett.
Yeah. No, funny enough. So like, that's exactly what happened, right? You would auth to your Apple account, then it would go through the registration flow for that app. And that's actually something I've seen in the past. I've seen it on it was like an open source shop, like eShop, where they used their own custom implementation of auth, and every account had a hard-coded password. But that was like hard-coded in the back end. I found that via like source review. So this was like very interesting to me because I was like, hey, this is like the same vuln I've seen in the past, but they're just sending it through. Like someone like literally typed that password out into a template file and thought like, yeah, this is fine. Like that was very shocking to me.
What could go wrong here possibly?
Yeah. To kind of divert from that a little bit though, because you were just talking about the auth, is like something that people didn't really get from the blog posts is like how much time we spent learning Apple's auth system. I mean, we could have done a whole blog post on their auth system alone. And that amount of research, just digging into their auth system, allowed us to kind of identify these things like, hey, this is something custom that they've added to this.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that we hit at some point were, we realized like some of these apps are behind auth, but we could authenticate to them as regular users or apply for them. And I think a lot of bug hunters don't do that anymore. They see a login page that has no sign up. They don't try and figure out how the sign up thing works, because, then correct me again, Sam, if we wouldn't have logged in for the developer account, if we wouldn't have signed up for the developer account and then enrolled ourselves in some of these apps, we probably wouldn't have found some of these bugs, right?
Yeah, there's probably about, I would say like a dozen bugs where it's like behind the developer portal or like requires like developer access. But yeah, like understanding that system was like really, because I remember, you know, one of the apps that like we found like maybe 6 or 7 bugs on was like this, I think it may have been a misconfigured authentication thing, because like when you log into an Apple app, it says like, is this email does this email have access to like log into this application? And it was mainly to distinguish between like corporate and non-corporate apps. But like there's this one application where it's like a learning center for employees, and you could sign in as like a regular user or register as a regular user. And we found like a bunch of like really interesting behavior with that application. And we found, I think, like 6 or 7 like access control bugs, and I think maybe one bug too, where we were able to like traverse and like disclose local files, not the contents, but like the file names, which was like not the craziest bug, but like it was really cool being able to like see like // and return like the folder contents, especially for like that application. But I guess that's like an example of like an app that we access via like their broken authentication.
I want to talk about the collaboration part a little bit more. Why was this what role did collaboration play in all of this? Let's start with you, ZLZ, and then we'll go up.
Yeah, I mean, like, everyone was so good about, like, there were literally times, I think, I remember in the middle of the hacking, like, I went on, like, a vacation with, like, a couple of my friends.
When you're on your phone.
Yeah, and I was swimming at a beach, and I get back to, like, my little towel, and I see, like, 100 messages, and they're like, we have RCE, or, you know, we have command injection. And I'm sending an email to Apple on my phone, like RCE via, and then like I copied the POC over from Discord, and like it was just really weird because like I'm on Central Time Zone. I think Brett and Sam are on like East Coast, and then Ben's on like California time. So I mean, like there would be times where it's like I found like a bunch of cool stuff, but I gotta get off for the night, and then the next morning it'd be like someone else looks at it, and everybody has like a different perspective of it. But it really, really helped in like understanding a bunch of different things. Pretty much every bug we had, it wasn't independent. I mean, like if you look at the spreadsheet that we have, it's like it's pretty much like, you know, like 40% one person, you know, and then 30-30 or something like that. And it kind of shows just like how much everybody was putting time into it.
What about you, Brett? What was your thought on collaboration throughout this process?
I mean, you know, initially with the recon, it's always appreciated. You know, you guys are always finding things that I'm just not going to find. And that, like, as others find, you know, apps and stuff for me to look at, you know, it allows me to spend more time where I'm interested. And that kind of like keeps me motivated instead of just kind of like being like, all right, I've got all this data. Where do I even start? That can kind of like kill it for me. In terms of like the apps and stuff, you know, almost every single finding, I'm just clicking through and I'm just like, hey, this is interesting. Just drop it in Discord. Just keep going. Hey, this is interesting. Just keep going. And then every once in a while, you know, I just like the one we were just talking about where it's like, hey, I clicked forgot password. Why the hell am I logged in as this user? And I didn't really think anything of it. And then I think it was like ZLZ was just like, hit this endpoint. And I was just like, yeah, it generated a session for me now. And I was like, dude, Like, it's so clever. Like, it's obvious in hindsight to say that, but at the time, you know, you're digging through so many things. People are just thinking of, you know, things that you're not, right? It's that back and forth, right? Like, people have ideas that you're missing, or I think it's what Irby said earlier is like, you know, it's very interesting to see all of the criticals I would have missed if I was hacking alone.
I think perspective is a very big thing in all this, because we don't only have one of us looking at this app anymore. We have you looking at this app in a certain way, and then some other person looks at this endpoint and understands it different than we do, and then we start connecting all these different pieces of the puzzle, right?
Yeah, 100%. Just to add to that, I think it was actually Sam Erb who found I just wanted to clarify this a little bit. Found that like what it was like you could literally hit an endpoint, like in any standard authentication flow, like you sign into Twitter and then you want to authorize like another application, you go through that OAuth flow where you could like generate the bearer. But like the account we were logged into was supposedly like no privileges at all, you know, like it can't do anything. But what was interesting is like reapproaching that, saying like maybe if we generate a bearer, we can access like the API. And I don't know, like again, like Zayed said, like in hindsight, it's like, oh well, duh. But like for this, it was like super clever and ended up like owning the whole application.
Yeah. Herb, since we're on the topic of your name, tell us about the collaboration in this.
I mean, really past what I've already said, you know, I at the end of the day, I did want to get Sam an awesome blog post. You know, that at least for me was like some initial motivation to like really get interested in this. And, you know, for a lot of the stuff too, it's like, you know, and I find that sometimes, I think Brett kind of commented on this earlier, it's like sometimes with bug bounty work, it's like it can be demotivating if you don't have an interest to look at a company. It's like, you know, if you get invited to some random private program, it's like, it doesn't describe what the company is. It's like, well, why am I interested in this past, you know, some monetary gain? You know, like what's in it for me? And like, that's kind of why I like, you know, the DoD vulnerability disclosure program a bit, is just because, you know, at least I feel like I'm doing something there that's useful while I'm trying to find these vulnerabilities. But you know, for me, at least initially, the interest really was in, you know, let's get Sam as cool with BlogPost as possible, and then it just kind of evolved from there.
What about you, Tanner? What was this collaboration like for you?
Yeah, so I was actually really excited. This is like the largest amount of any bug bounty work I've done at all, other than just kind of lightly looking at things on the side. For me, a lot of the collaboration was, and I think I've touched on this earlier, right, was just trying to find new ways to ease some of the repetitive work, right? I think that's really how for the last probably year, that's how I would say 90% of web hacking tools have been about, is automation. But there really is a lot of room there for a lot of very repetitive work that a lot of people are going to be doing over and over again. So being able to collaborate with everyone and watching all of y'all hack, you know, live and trying to pick out and find the things that everyone was doing over and over again was a lot of fun for me to try to pinpoint some areas that could be benefited by some new tools.
So usually I end the interview portion with a game, but since there's 4 of us, I can't play this game anymore. I've done this with some of you already, but I want to go around. Do one well, I'm going to do first out with this one. What's one thing you each learned from this experience or experiment, whatever you want to call it? What's one thing you all learned? Let's start with you, Tanner, going down to Herb, Zalesy, and then Brett.
I would say for me, the thing I learned most was the methodologies, right? So watching, you know, Zayed, Zalesy, or, you know, go through their process of how they found some of these bugs was very, very insightful. It was a lot of fun to learn.
What about you, Sam?
Sorry, I just blanked on the question. Can you repeat it one more time?
What's one thing you learned from this, you know, from this experiment that we did for a few months?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, I had an answer ready to go, and I was like, what question am I answering again? No, it's for me, it was really learning about Apple's infrastructure. You know, I think it was very interesting to learn how such a large company operates so much custom infrastructure. That to me was really fascinating, and you know, I'm happy I did it. There are definitely more bugs there. I'll say that.
What about you, Sam?
I think like in a weird way, just like approaching mobile apps. I did like a lot of work. It wasn't really gone over too much in the blog post, but just like understanding the best way to approach like mobile apps, like proxying, like using a bit of Frida. I've never really done that too much in depth outside of maybe like Uber, but like understanding how to approach that with Apple. Yeah, if I can answer with two as well, but I mean like what Sam said, like Apple's infrastructure is like super like even like it's super large, but in addition to it, like it's existed since like 1980, right? So I mean like one of the core things we messed with was literally this like it was like this, I'm blanking on what it's called right now, but we ran into it all the time. We could never hack it. We never found a way to do it. But it's like this weird proxy system, but yeah, super interesting.
I think the proxy thing was the one with the GBI thing. We kept seeing that over and over. It was like there was this endpoints like monitor and some other stuff would come up, and we never really we saw it a lot, but we never. I actually didn't understand how we could use it because the monitor endpoint wouldn't work, from what I remember.
Yeah, Brett, do you remember I think there's that as well, but there's additionally like the. Do you remember we kept running into it? We tried to read like as much documentation about it as possible, Brett. It was like that one weird. I'm totally blanking on the name of it, but we read documentation for it. There's like manuals and stuff everywhere. I'll try to find it.
Yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head.
Brett, what about you? What was one thing that you learned from all this?
Yeah, so this is like stealing from ZLZ a little bit, what he said earlier, but there was a point where I was just kind of like, all right, I've clicked through all these sites a bunch. We've got all these like API hosts that we kind of like know where they exist, but we knew we had to like start diving into, you know, OS X apps, mobile apps, because they just like a lot of these services required like 8 headers, and it had like insane auth, you know, easy to manipulate and play with, but you know, you have to be running the app to, you know, capture these and kind of figure out how they work. And I'd say that was like very interesting for me, was to just grab my MacBook, just throw burp in between everything that was outgoing. And it's like, now I'm doing just like API hacking on, you know, these apps on the MacBook. And that was like, yeah, that was kind of new for me. Yeah.
I think understanding the authentication thing was the biggest thing. My key takeaway was just so like zooming out on the company. For us, it was a big fraction of the company, because we only did Apple.com for most of the part, and really understanding how everything works. Like the logging thing was huge. Understand the infrastructure, like you guys said, and knowing where to hit Apple where it hurts to get these bugs that are valuable, that might get paid or might be critical, at least for them, that would be at least impactful, right? It's cool to find XSS, it's cool to find like iDoors, but if there was no real impact, then there isn't really much there, right? Let's go around and talk about the Apple's bug bounty program. And what did you guys think? Let's start with you, Herb. What did you think of the Apple bug bounty program? Do you recommend it? Not recommend it? Did you like it? Did you enjoy hacking it?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to approach this like you approach any other bug bounty program. Even more so, maybe like you really can't have any expectation of getting paid, honestly. And that's why like I really. Anyone who've ever talked to, I've really discouraged from going full time into this, unless they're, at some high tier, I should say. There really isn't, when you approach a big company like this, you really have to go in there with with no expectations. And, with us, I feel like we got lucky in a few cases. We did have some cool findings, but at the same time, a lot of the stuff could have been found by other people.
What about you, ZLZ?
Yeah, so I guess full of Samuel Herb here. Could you repeat the question one more time? I just want to make sure I understand.
What's your just take on the Apple bug bounty program? Yeah. Did you enjoy it? Do you recommend it?
Yeah, I think echoing what Sam said, the idea like that, you should go into it not really. It's going into it and like not knowing whether or not you're going to be paid is like kind of I feel like it's a bit like it's kind of like a general take. It's very true, but like there's also the perspective of like, once you understand like what Apple's looking for, and like once you understand, I think these things, it makes it a bit easier. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like going into it with like kind of no expectations is probably the easiest, like best way to figure it out and probably like provide value. I really enjoyed the program. I really, 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 I think they had like a great communication process. It's brand new. Their web stuff is like brand new. It's only existed for like, I think maybe a couple months now, and they're still exploring it. They're still trying to figure out like the best way to do it. And I feel like Apple is like ready to work with researchers in, figuring out the best way to do their bounty program. Maybe right now there's like some pitfall with like, there's a couple dozen researchers who are going at it like as hard as possible. And it's maybe a little bit slow right now or something. But I feel like in the future, it definitely will be a very, very, very competitive program. And it will be like probably one of the top programs in bug bounty. Their payouts right now are like, they have really, really, really high payouts for like valuable, high severity issues. And I think that they're one of like the super competitive in that sense, right? Like if you find a very critical bug, Apple is ready to pay like what it's worth. And to be fair too, like Sam said, a lot of the bugs could have been found by other people. Absolutely. And in a certain way, I feel like a lot of the findings we had, I almost didn't really want to like blog about. Like for instance, not to dismiss the bug, but like finding the actuator endpoint was like relatively like, it's a dir search and it's the recon process. And I feel like that's not necessarily like new in that sense, but like it felt like there was like so much that there's so much like room for like really cool bugs. And I feel like there's other people like doing really just as cool stuff and probably not talking about it. And I'm really excited to see moving forward for Apple's program, the bugs that people are willing to share. And that's one thing, again, Apple is like awesome about their disclosure policy.
Yeah.
They said like, once it's fixed, you're good to talk about it. But we still tried to work like as best as possible with them. But they have a fantastic disclosure policy. Like basically like, yeah, once it's fixed, talk about it. Just don't, whatever. We'd like to review it, but we'll let you disclose it in good faith, and we'll let you know if there's anything wrong. But really fantastic program. Sorry for long, but yeah, I really, really enjoyed the program.
What about you, Zayat?
Yeah, I mean, ZLZ pretty much said everything I was thinking. I think like disclosure is a very big, it's proof that they care and that they understand researchers, right? I'm sure Apple, maybe like the web stuff and us reporting like, lots of like, I want to say smaller, but like just higher frequency of issues that are like web related versus them, dealing with these big jailbreak hacks, big exploits that take people, maybe like months or a year. And they're used to just that slow process and high payouts and maybe like some contention with researchers. And on the website, I think they're kind of like adjusting and realizing, okay, we got to get this process fine-tuned. It needs to be a little bit quicker. But you could tell, I mean, we were on a Zoom call with them, right? And we just had a couple questions for them, and they're like, hey, why don't we just hop on this Zoom call? We're like, okay, what's this about? We didn't even know what to expect. And it just turned into like this, I think it was like an hour-long meeting of them just wanting feedback, right? Like, that's a team that cares, right? And they understand the space. They want to work with people. I think right now, though, if you were to hop in right now and go hard on it and just you're expecting like, fast turnaround, lots of money, I think you're going to get like disappointed. I think you need to take the approach that it's relatively young. Within a year, it could be amazing. Yeah. Probably will be amazing. But just go into it knowing like you are going to have to kind of do this for fun initially. And then, what happens. But.
What about you, Tanner?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's already said everything. I think the only thing I can maybe add was that it was just I think you're hard pressed to find a more fascinating target than Apple. I mean, it's just like the company, right? I mean, it's to a point where it almost feels movie worthy in the sense of like a type of target you're going after. So I think that was just fascinating. I think ZLZ touched on this, is that some of the bugs you find when you realize it's like this is affecting, suddenly millions of people, right? Is huge. So I think that was probably the most exciting thing for me about the program.
Yeah, I agree. I think hacking Apple is probably like one of the top things, if not the top things I've done as part of my bug bounty hunting career. It's fucking Apple. Who doesn't use an Apple product, like it's either an iPhone, MacBook Pro, something, Apple TV. You use them; they're all around. Everybody uses them around the world. So it's hacking that big organization that everybody knows about. But I also think that bug bounty program, what Brett said is really on point for me. It's just outside of everything that happened, whether it was good, it was bad, whatever. Like all that aside, the fact that you're open to communicate with us, and not just via email, you're open to getting on a call with us to collect our feedback in a part of your implementation for your next phase of your bug bounty program. It's a huge thing, right? It shows that they care. Web wasn't their focus. We, 5 of us just jumped in like, hey, we just want to own your entire infrastructure on the your web presence, and here's like 60 bugs we found. Sorry, figure it out, kind of a thing. Because they've done bug bounties, but mostly on their products, mostly on their hardware, not so much on their web part, right?
Yeah, and I guess to add to that, like, I reading like a lot of the feedback for the blog post, I think there's like a lot of reoccurring themes in bug bounty, which is the reoccurring theme of we will have good faith for the researchers, but bad faith for the company. And then it always turns into, the company didn't pay within this period of time. It could have been sold like on the dark net or whatever. But then like when you approach that from the company side, like Apple is probably facing like legitimate APTs and like insane, like the amount of bugs that they probably have reported them, the amount of like sludge going through their system. You just got to have like an understanding from the program perspective. Like they ended up paying like very well, and we're still like not, and again, this isn't bad, but like we're still waiting on like a couple bucks to be paid, and we're completely fine with that because we understand like, just today, like someone, I think I saw something for like someone found like RCE and like iPhone 11 Pro Max. I'm like, that is insane. Like they're having to deal with that. Like this is a security team. But like understanding like they do really, really, really care. Like it's a super passionate team of people. Like speaking to them was just like super fascinating. Yeah, that's just kind of my tidbit to that. But I just really hope that people, when they do eventually hack on Apple, just understand from their side like what a conundrum they have for their stuff.
Someone in the chat asking, let's just start with you, Zelzi. Would you consider hacking on Apple again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now I'm kind of like hard pressed. I feel like maybe everyone else is as well, but just the amount of time we spent was like super significant. I'm incredibly burnt out. I haven't hacked the last month. I've literally been playing video games every day. It's been hard. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Would definitely consider it.
Brett, what about you?
I think I'm in a similar boat, and I think, like for me personally, like I'll skip like 2 quarters of the year. It's kind of like mountains. Like I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna hack on something for like a month or 2, and then I'll just kind of disappear for a while. I think if I like all of a sudden found motivation to hack again tomorrow, like I don't know, maybe I would look at Apple again. But I think we were kind of hitting that point of like, all right, a lot of the low-hanging stuff is gone. We're gonna have to like really sit down and figure out like specific things to look for. I would absolutely, I would. It's just maybe just a little bit of burnout, I guess.
What about you, Tanner?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's kind of an interesting question for me to answer. I don't feel like I had necessarily a ton of input on a lot of the hacking. I mean, I think it was fun from the sense of, I guess, to take a more general approach. I think in teams, working in groups is a lot of fun, especially from the angle I take to bug bounty hunting. So I guess I would say in general, yes, for sure, I would go back to Apple just because a scope that large and a company that large allows for those type of long burn, group type hacking projects that bring about the type of things I like about the bug bounty space.
Sam, Herb, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely kind of feel that burnout sometimes as well. It really, it kind of depends on, what else is going on in my life. How busy I am at work. If I need to put in a bunch of extra hours there, it's like, well then, maybe I want to go stare at a wall for a few hours and go to bed. So it kind of depends on, how the rest of my life is going is maybe a better way to look at it than whether or not I want to look at Apple particularly again.
Yeah, I think from just a bug bounty perspective, I think, yes, there's a huge bug bounty program, decent payouts if you, maybe not decent, great payouts if you find the right vulns and you hit the right apps. I recommend it, but it just, like you guys all said, it's one of those things where go in with no expectations, do it for fun, and if the money comes in, and then it does. I think that's what also we did. We went in, not expecting a lot of money, and when it started rolling in, it was a happy thing for us. It was exciting. Before I wrap this up, I want to just open up for you guys. Anything you want to add? Let's start with you, ZLZ. If anything you want to add before we jump off this call?
Well, if you guys don't believe us for the money aspect, just know that the month after we stopped hacking Apple, we had the same intensity hacking Red Bull, trying to score crates of Red Bull for ourselves. So not super financially motivated.
But we tried. Brett, what about you? Anything you want to add?
For what? Just like in general?
In general, man.
Yeah, I mean, for one, thanks for having us on just to talk. This is long overdue. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, hack the planet.
Hack the planet. Hey, I just wanted to say halfway through the interview, I realized what you had in the background. I think I messaged you guys in the group, and I was like, I just realized Brett's background with the Hacker Man meme. Tanner, what about you? Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I think I'm good. I think it was a fun experience. I was happy to be a part of it. It was just a lot of fun the whole way through. Yeah.
Sam Erb, last but not least, keeping the best for last. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess like really the one thing I wanted to add is like, find people to work with. I feel like I'm really honored, privileged to work with these guys, and they're all good people and all white hats, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So thank y'all.
Yeah, and I would say thank you guys for taking your Sunday. I know we're all in different time zones, so evening, almost afternoon, evening for you guys. Still noon for me almost. I would say thank you guys so much for being here. And Sam, thank you for putting this together, man. Like, you guys put this together, you and Brett, and then you kind of roped us all in, and it was a very fun experience. And I think it's opened up a lot of doors, opportunities, and just great memories to talk about. We did this thing with Apple, and we got to all be a part of it. So thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate you guys so much. And everyone keeps asking what's next. Like, someone's like, oh, what about Google? What about Red Bull? What about this? What if they come up with something, right? At some point.
Hopefully. Again, I didn't mention this, but yeah, seriously, thank you for having us. Really, really appreciate the opportunity to work with everyone as well. Super, super great people. Can't touch on that enough.
Chat, give it up for my amazing guest. If you want, you should go follow them. If you don't follow them already on Twitter, I'm going to drop their info right here. If you're watching this from home, later on YouTube, look to the right or above me right here somewhere. There, the information's right there. Make sure you follow them. Amazing researchers, amazing people. I can't say enough about these guys. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to more hacking and hacking the planet with you guys.
See you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Bye. All right, that was a lot of fun. I don't know what to say. I'm just glad these guys showed up. It's one of those things. It's one of those experiences that I personally don't think I'll ever forget, and I'm forever grateful of it. I'm grateful that I was a part of this. Making friends through hacking has been one of the best things that's happened to me so far, and yeah, speechless. Don't know what else to say. I want to do a quick shout out. I know there was a lot of subscribers, a lot of new followers. I want to say thank you guys so much for being here every Sunday. Sundays are one of my streams that I look forward to. Not that I don't look forward to the other ones. It's just the vibe is different on Sundays. I have guests. I have you guys. Everybody's here. I want to say thank you guys so much for being here every Sunday. I appreciate it so much. There was a lot of followers. Thank you guys so much for following, and thank you so much for all the new subs. If you do have Twitch Prime, remember, it doesn't have to be me, but if you have Twitch Prime, if you have Amazon Prime, you can connect your Amazon Prime to Twitch. Use that to subscribe to your favorite content creators. It doesn't have to be me. It could be Ash. It could be Donut. It could be Superhero. It could be Cyber Mentor. Whoever you like the most, give him a follow. It adds up. Support your favorite content creators. Also, come to Discord. I'm going to drop my Discord here. If you want to come hang out, most of us now homies are in there, including myself, Donut, Zayat, everybody else that's in the chat. I think they're mostly all also a part of the Discord channel. So come hang out with us. That's it. I love you guys. I appreciate it so much. I'm done for today. I gotta go get some food. I'm hungry. I'm starving. I'm not gonna lie. That's it. Gonna raid Alt F4 stream. I don't know what they're doing, but we're gonna just raid and show them some love. When we get into the channel, make sure you rate with some Nahomi emotes. Show them some love, and let's represent. Thank you guys. I appreciate you so much. I will see you all tomorrow at 11:30 Pacific time, my time. I'm out. See you guys. Peace.